The desert wind carried sand that cut like tiny knives. Wraith's ship screamed across the orange sky, trailing black smoke from 3 different holes in the hull. Behind him, the mercenary vessel matched every desperate turn he made. They had been chasing him for 2 days straight, and his fuel reserves showed empty. Blood dripped from between his scales where the energy weapons had burned through. Each breath felt like swallowing broken glass. His wings, folded tight against his body in the cramped cockpit, throbbed with pain from an earlier hit. The right wing membrane had a tear the size of his hand, and it would never heal properly without treatment. Treatment he would never get. Not from humans, not after what they did to his family. The memory flashed unbidden. His mother's roar cutting short, his father trying to shield the younglings, the laughter of the hunters as they carved away scales while his parents still breathed. Wraith had only escaped because his sister pushed him into the escape pod and sealed it from the outside. He never saw her again. The console screamed warnings. Systems failing. Hull integrity at 12%. The mercenary ship fired again, and this time the shot connected with his starboard thruster. The ship spun wildly, and Wraith fought the controls with all 4 limbs. His claws gouged marks in the metal as he struggled to level out. The ground rushed up too fast. He saw structures below, a mining colony. Judging by the excavation scars across the landscape, humans would be there, hundreds of them. He tried to pull up, to crash anywhere else, but the ship refused to respond. The impact drove his teeth through his tongue. Metal shrieked and tore. The world spun 3 times before stopping upside down. Wraith hung in the crash webbing, disoriented and bleeding from a dozen new wounds. Alarms wailed until the power finally died, leaving only the tick of cooling metal and his own ragged breathing. He released the webbing and fell hard onto the cockpit ceiling. Something in his chest cracked, and the pain made his vision white out for several heartbeats. When he could see again, smoke filled the cabin. He kicked at the emergency hatch until it popped free, then dragged himself out into the harsh sunlight. The colony sat 200 meters away, close enough to see the buildings, far enough that his broken body would never make it. Not that it mattered. They would come to investigate the crash. They always did. And when they found him, they would finish what the mercenaries started. At least it would be over. At least he could stop running. Something howled in the distance. Wraith's head snapped up despite the spike of pain. The local predators had caught the scent of blood. 3 of them crested a nearby dune, each the size of a small transport. They had too many legs and mouths that opened in 4 directions. The colonists called them sand rippers, and they could tear through steel when hungry enough. Wraith tried to stand. His legs wouldn't support his weight. He crawled instead, leaving a trail of glowing blue blood across the orange sand. Each movement sent fresh agony through his damaged chest. The sand rippers moved faster, excited by his weakness. There, an opening in the rock face ahead, partially hidden by a maintenance hatch hanging on broken hinges. He threw himself forward with his last strength and tumbled into darkness. The tunnel swallowed him, and he rolled down a steep incline before slamming into a wall. He lay there, unable to move, listening to the frustrated snarls of the sand rippers above. They were too large to follow. Eventually, they would lose interest and hunt easier prey. The tunnel smelled of oil and human machinery. Emergency lights flickered far down the passage, casting everything in red. An abandoned maintenance level, probably part of the old mining infrastructure. Good. The humans wouldn't come here often. He could die in peace, away from their eyes and their weapons. Wraith dragged himself to a corner and tucked his damaged wings as close as possible. The movement made him whimper despite himself. He was alone now. Truly alone. The last of his family dying in a hole beneath a human colony. His internal temperature dropped as shock set in. He could feel his secondary heart struggling to compensate for the blood loss. Without medical attention, he had perhaps 3 days. Less if infection took hold. Footsteps echoed in the distance. Human footsteps light and quick. They had found his blood trail. Of course they had. They would collect his body, harvest his scales, sell them to the weapons manufacturers. That was all his kind meant to them, raw materials. The footsteps grew louder, closer. A beam of light swept across the tunnel walls. Wraith's eyes, adapted for darkness, tracked the approaching figure. One human alone, carrying only a light and some kind of scanning device. Not armed, which meant nothing. Humans killed with more than weapons. Wraith bared his teeth and summoned what remained of his strength. If this was his end, he would face it fighting. His claws scraped against the stone floor as he tried to rise. The sound echoed through the tunnel like a promise of violence. The footsteps stopped. The light fixed on him. Wraith hissed, low and threatening. The last defense of a creature with nothing left to lose. His vision blurred with pain and blood loss, but he kept his eyes locked on the silhouette in the darkness. The human spoke, words lost in the ringing in Wraith's ears. Then the figure did something unexpected. The light lowered. Hands rose, empty and open, in a gesture Wraith had seen once before long ago when his mother had taught him about the old ways of showing peace. But humans did not know peace. Humans only knew how to take. Daniel Reed had worked in the deep tunnels for 3 years, and he knew every sound the machinery made. The grinding of excavators, the hum of ventilation systems, the periodic clang of cooling pipes. This sound was none of those. This was the wet rasp of something breathing where nothing should be. He followed the noise through sections that had been closed for months. His scanner showed a trail of biological material, something with a thermal signature far hotter than human. The readings made no sense until he remembered the crashed ship the day crew had reported. They said it went down in the wastes too far to bother with. Apparently it had been closer than anyone thought. The tunnel opened into a junction chamber, and his light found the creature immediately. Golden bronze scales caught the beam and threw it back in fractured patterns. Wings, torn and bleeding, folded against a body too large to be fully hidden in the shadows. Eyes like molten copper fixed on him with pure hatred. A draken. Daniel had seen pictures in the military briefings back when he still wore a uniform. They were supposed to be rare, endangered. The galaxy was supposed to protect them now after what the corporations had done. The creature hissed and tried to rise. It made it halfway before collapsing, claws scraping against stone. One wing dragged uselessly, the membrane shredded. Dark blue blood pooled beneath it, glowing faintly in the darkness. Daniel set down his toolkit slowly. No weapons. He never carried weapons anymore. Not after the things he had done with them. His hands rose, palms out, in the universal gesture that meant he intended no harm. Whether the Draken understood or not, he could not tell. Easy, he said, keeping his voice level. I am not going to hurt you. The creature made a sound like tearing metal. Its jaws opened, showing teeth designed to crush starship hulls. But the threat was hollow. Daniel could see the tremor in its limbs, the way its eyes struggled to focus. Shock and blood loss. Without help, it would die within days. He activated his scanner and swept it over the Draken's body. Internal bleeding. 3 broken ribs. Severe dehydration. The wing damage was the least of it, though probably the most painful. His scanner highlighted a dozen injuries that needed immediate treatment. I can help, Daniel said. If you let me. The Draken lunged. Daniel jerked back, but the creature's claws missed his face by inches. It collapsed again, panting, blue blood dripping from its mouth. The message was clear enough. Stay away or die trying. Daniel backed toward the tunnel entrance. The Draken watched him go, tension visible in every line of its body. At the threshold, Daniel stopped. He pulled his water canister from his belt, twisted off the cap and set it on the floor. Next came the emergency medical kit from his toolkit. Basic supplies, barely enough for a human, but better than nothing. I will come back, he said. Think about it. He left before the Draken could make another attempt to kill him. His hand shook the whole way back to the surface. Not from fear, from memory. He had seen that look before, in the eyes of civilians when his unit had stormed their settlement. The look that said they expected only cruelty from humans because that was all they had ever received. He had been ordered to fire on them as they fled. He had refused. The court-martial had been swift, the discharge less than honorable. 3 years later, he still saw their faces when he closed his eyes. The next day, Daniel brought more supplies. Food paste that could sustain almost any biological system, antiseptic that worked on carbon-based life forms, bandaging material. He set them just inside the tunnel entrance and retreated without trying to approach. The Draken watched from the shadows, eyes glowing like banked coals. On the 3rd day, the water canister was empty. The medical kit had been opened, the bandages gone. Daniel allowed himself a small measure of hope. He brought a battery-powered heater this time. The tunnels ran cold at night, and the Draken's thermal signature had dropped significantly since the first day. My name is Daniel, he said to the darkness. I know you probably understand galactic standard. Most species do. You do not have to tell me yours. You do not have to trust me. But if you are going to survive, you need help. Real help, not just supplies, silence answered him. But when he set down the heater and fresh water, he saw the Draken had moved closer to the entrance. Not much, maybe 3 meters, but it was something. On the 5th day, Daniel brought a portable medical scanner, the expensive kind that could diagnose and treat a dozen species. He sat against the tunnel wall, far from the Draken, and activated the device. This can help with the pain, he said. It has medication protocols for most species. I think it has your biology in the database. If you come closer, I can use it. The Draken did not move, but it spoke, voice rough as grinding stone. Why, one word, heavy with suspicion and pain? Daniel considered his answer carefully. Because you are hurt. Because I can help. Because no one else will. Humans killed my family. Daniel's chest tightened. I know. Humans have killed a lot of families. We are very good at it. He paused, choosing his next words carefully. I used to be a soldier. I did things I am not proud of. I saw things that made me sick, so I left. I cannot fix what other humans did. But maybe I can do something right just this once. The Draken was quiet for a long time. Then slowly, painfully, it dragged itself 3 meters closer, still not within reach, but closer than before. Its eyes met Daniel's, searching for deception, for the trap it believed must be coming. Daniel did not move. He barely breathed, and in the silence of the abandoned tunnel, something fragile and precious began to form between a wounded creature and a broken man. The colony administrator posted the notice on the 7th day. Equipment malfunctions in the lower tunnels required immediate inspection. Chief Oren Valdez would be leading a team down within 48 hours. Daniel read the announcement 3 times, his coffee growing cold in his hand. He had 48 hours to move Wraith deeper into the abandoned sections, or explain why a dying Draken was bleeding out beneath the mining facility. Neither option seemed particularly good. You look worried, Beth Williams said, dropping into the seat across from him. The excavation specialist had arms like steel cables and a scar across her jaw from a cave-in 2 years back. She also noticed everything, which made her dangerous. Something wrong with the tunnels? Daniel forced himself to drink the cold coffee. Just standard maintenance issues. Nothing serious. Funny thing about standard maintenance issues, they do not usually make people skip meals for a week straight. Beth leaned back, studying him with eyes that had seen through better lies than his. You have been disappearing every day. Same time, same duration. Either you have found something valuable down there, or you are hiding something. Which is it? Neither. Just doing my job. Your job is topside engineering, not tunnel crawling. She tapped her fingers on the table. Look, I do not care what you are doing. Not my business. But Valdez cares, and when he starts caring, people tend to end up unemployed. Or worse. Just thought you should know. She left before Daniel could respond. He sat alone in the cafeteria weighing his options. They all led to the same conclusion. Wraith could not be moved in his condition, and he could not be found. Which meant Daniel needed to make sure Valdez's inspection team found nothing suspicious. He spent the day rigging false readings in the tunnel sensors. Not enough to be obvious, just minor fluctuations that would justify the equipment reports without triggering deeper investigation. It was temporary at best. Eventually, someone would want to physically inspect the areas, but it bought time. That evening, he brought the news to Wraith. The Draken had improved enough to sit upright, though his wings still hung at wrong angles. The worst of the bleeding had stopped, and the infection had not spread, thanks to the broad-spectrum antibiotics in the medical kit. They are coming, Daniel said without preamble. Security team. 48 hours. We need to move you deeper. Wraith's eyes narrowed. How deep do these tunnels go? Deep enough. The old mine shafts extend for kilometers. Most of them are sealed, but I can open access doors from the maintenance terminal. And how long before they search those too? Wraith shifted and his damaged wing scraped against the wall. He hissed in pain but did not stop moving. You cannot hide me forever. This colony is too small. Daniel had been thinking the same thing. Hiding was not a solution. It was just delaying the inevitable. Then we need a different plan. We get you healthy enough to leave. Repair your ship or get you to a transport off-world. My ship is scrap metal, and any transport that lands here reports to the Galactic Mining Consortium. They have contracts with the mercenary companies. Wraith's claws scraped against the stone floor. You know what they will do if they find me. You have seen the reports. You know why my scales are valuable. Daniel did know. Draken scales could absorb and redirect energy in ways that made them perfect for military shielding. A full set could outfit an entire battalion. The going rate was enough to buy a small moon. Corporations had hunted them to near extinction before the council stepped in. And even then, illegal hunting continued. The mercenaries who chased Wraith were not going to give up just because he crashed. Then we make sure they do not find you, Daniel said. There has to be a way. Why do you care? Wraith's voice dropped low, dangerous. I am nothing to you. My death would be easier than my survival. You could report me, collect a reward, and live comfortably for the rest of your life. Why do you keep coming back? Daniel had asked himself the same question every day. He still did not have a good answer. Because you need help. That is enough. That is not an answer. That is sentiment. Humans are not sentimental creatures. Your history proves that. You are right. We are not. Daniel met Wraith's eyes without flinching. We are violent. We are greedy. We destroy things because we can. I know what my species is capable of because I have done those things. I have hurt people who did not deserve it. I have followed orders that made me sick, and I cannot undo any of it. He paused, his hands clenching into fists. But I can do this. I can help one person who needs it. Maybe that does not fix anything. Maybe it does not make me less guilty, but it is something I can do right now today. So I am doing it. Wraith studied him for a long moment. Then slowly the Draken lowered his head. Not submission. Something else. Understanding, perhaps, or at least acknowledgement. My name is Wraith, he said quietly. My family called me brave, though I do not feel brave. I feel afraid. I have been afraid since the day they died. Fear is normal. It keeps us alive. It also keeps us alone. Wraith's wing twitched, a gesture Daniel was learning to read as discomfort. I have been alone for a long time. Daniel stood and moved closer. Not too close. Just enough to be within reach if Wraith needed help. You are not alone anymore. Not while I am here. The Draken made a sound that might have been a laugh or might have been a sob. That is the problem. I am starting to believe you. Above them, in the colony proper, preparations began for the tunnel inspection. The countdown had started, and neither of them knew if they would survive what came next. Valdez found them 12 hours ahead of schedule. Daniel was changing the bandages on Wraith's wing when the security chief walked into the chamber with 5 others behind him. The flashlights blazed like small suns, and Wraith recoiled, his damaged wings spreading as far as they could in the confined space. Do not move, Valdez ordered, his voice flat and professional. 3 of his team had weapons drawn, standard protocol for unknown contacts. The other 2 held scanners that painted Wraith in diagnostic light. Daniel stood slowly, placing himself between Wraith and the guns. His hands rose, non-threatening. Orin, wait. Let me explain. Explain what? That you have been harboring an unregistered alien in company tunnels? That you have been stealing medical supplies? That you have been sabotaging inspection equipment? Valdez's jaw was tight. I gave you the benefit of the doubt, Daniel. I thought maybe you were running a side business. Smuggling spare parts. Something I could overlook. Not this. He is injured. He needs help. He is worth 6 million credits. His scales alone could fund colony operations for 5 years. Valdez gestured to his team. Secure the creature. Prep a transport. We will contact the consortium and arrange transfer. Wraith snarled, a sound that made the tunnel vibrate. You will not take me alive. We do not need you alive, one of the security team said. Dead scales work just as well. The temperature in the tunnel dropped 10 degrees. Daniel felt it like a physical force as Wraith's body began to gather heat, preparing for a final desperate fight. The Draken might be injured, but he was still dangerous. In this confined space, he could kill half the team before they brought him down. Stand down, a new voice ordered. Beth Williams pushed through the security team, followed by 2 others Daniel recognized from the engineering bay. Behind them came more. Rusty, the oldest miner in the colony. Priya, the young systems analyst. At least a dozen workers, all carrying tools instead of weapons. Valdez turned on them. This is a security matter. Return to your stations. This is a moral matter, Beth said, and we are not moving. You are interfering with company business. I can have all of you arrested. For what? Standing in a tunnel? Rusty stepped forward, his weathered face hard as the stone around them. I have been mining for 40 years. I have seen what the corporations do. I have seen them strip planets, exploit workers, and hunt sentient species to extinction for profit. I am too old and too tired to watch it happen again. Priya nodded. The Draken are protected under Galactic Council Resolution 447. Hunting them is illegal. Turning him over to mercenaries makes us accomplices to murder. The mercenaries have legal salvage rights, Valdez argued, but his voice had lost some of its certainty. The corporation approved the contract. Legal and right are not always the same thing, Beth said. You know that, Oren. You fought in the border wars. You saw what happened when we followed bad orders. Valdez's hand moved to his sidearm, then stopped. For a long moment, nobody moved. The security team looked at their chief, waiting for orders. The miners stood firm, blocking any path to Wraith. Daniel remained between them all, heart hammering in his chest. This will cost me my career, Valdez said finally. Probably, Beth agreed, but you will be able to look at yourself in the mirror. The security chief holstered his weapon. His team, seeing this, lowered theirs. I am not helping you, but I am giving you 24 hours before I report this to the administrator. What you do with that time is not my concern. He looked at Daniel. 24 hours. After that, I follow protocol. The security team filed out. When they were gone, Beth turned to Daniel with a grim smile. Well, that bought us a day. What is the plan? Daniel realized he had no plan. He had been so focused on keeping Wraith hidden that he had never thought past that point. I do not know. We need to get him off-world, Priya said. Supply transport comes in 3 days, too late. But the medical shuttle is scheduled for tomorrow afternoon. Routine delivery from the orbital station. Medical shuttles have full manifests and cargo scans, Rusty pointed out. They will detect him before he gets near the loading bay. Not if we shield the cargo hold, Priya said. I can rig something using the mining equipment. Create enough interference to mask his biosignature. Wraith spoke, his voice weak. I cannot fly. Even if you get me to orbit, I cannot pilot a ship. My wings are too damaged. We will fly you, Beth said simply. One of us goes with you. Gets you to a safe port. That is desertion, Daniel said. Whoever goes cannot come back. Then we draw straws. Beth pulled a handful of marker rods from her tool belt. Fair and simple. Daniel looked at the group that had gathered. These were not soldiers or heroes. They were miners and engineers and technicians. Ordinary people who worked hard jobs in a difficult place. They had families and debts and lives they would be leaving behind. But they stood here anyway, ready to risk everything for a creature they had just met. Why? Wraith asked, echoing Daniel's earlier question. Why would you do this for me? Beth crouched down until she was at Wraith's eye level. 10 years ago, my daughter got caught in a crossfire during the border wars. A Draken medic pulled her out of the rubble and kept her alive until help arrived. I never got to thank them. Maybe this is me paying that debt. She looked at the others. We all have reasons. But mostly it is because you need help and we can give it. That is how things should work. Wraith's eyes glistened with something that might have been tears. I do not understand your species. Neither do we, Daniel admitted. But sometimes we surprise ourselves. They had 24 hours to plan an impossible escape, and the mercenaries were already in orbit, waiting. The plan fell apart at hour 16. Priya had finished building the biosignature shield and was testing it in the lower bay, when the administrator's security override activated every scanner in the colony. Red lights flooded the corridors as the lockdown protocols engaged. They had been betrayed. Daniel ran for the medical bay where they had moved Wraith, but armed security blocked every corridor. Not Valdez's team. These were corporate enforcers, the kind who asked questions after bodies cooled. Through the window, he could see a tall woman in a gray suit examining a data pad. Her face was cold and efficient. Captain Hendricks, the mercenary who had chased Wraith across 3 systems. She had not just come to the colony, she had bought it. Beth grabbed Daniel's arm and pulled him into a side passage. They have warrants. Legal seizure of company assets for debt collection. The administrator sold us out to cover his gambling losses. Hendricks owns everything now, including mining rights to whatever is in the tunnels. Where is Wraith? Rusty and Priya moved him to the old geothermal plant. It is not on the main map, so they might not find it immediately, but they have thermal scanners. He is running a fever. They will track him within hours. They met the others in a storage room near the eastern wall. The mood was grim. Through the window, they could see mercenaries setting up scanning equipment across the colony. Military grade, expensive, thorough. We need a new plan, Beth said. We need a miracle, Rusty corrected. They own the colony now. They can search every centimeter legally, and they have an orbital cruiser for backup. Even if we get Wraith to the surface, they will shoot down any ship that tries to leave. Daniel's mind raced through possibilities and discarded them just as quickly. They were trapped. Wraith was dying. The mercenaries had every advantage. There had to be something. Some option they had not considered. The geothermal plant, he said slowly. How close is it to the exotic particle reservoir? Priya's eyes widened. Close, maybe 50 meters. But that is insane. The particles are unstable. Mix them with the wrong catalyst and you get an electromagnetic pulse that could fry every electronic device in 10 kilometers. Including the mercenary ship in orbit? Including everything. Computers, life support, communication. It would be a dead zone for hours. Maybe days. Priya shook her head. But it would also kill anyone near the blast point. The radiation exposure alone is lethal. What if we shield someone? Use the mining equipment, the same stuff you built the biosignature dampener with. It might work. For a few minutes. But whoever triggers the pulse will still get a massive dose of radiation. They would need immediate medical treatment or they would be dead within hours. Daniel looked at the group. So we trigger the pulse, disable everything, and evacuate during the blackout. Get Wraith to his ship, repair what we can, and launch before their systems come back online. His ship is destroyed, Beth reminded him. Then we use one of theirs. The mercenaries must have a shuttle on the surface. During the chaos, we steal it. This is insane, Rusty said, but he was smiling. Absolutely insane. When do we start? They split into teams. Beth and Rusty would prepare the particle reservoir. Priya would build a radiation shield, something portable enough to protect whoever triggered the pulse. Daniel would go to Wraith and explain the plan. The others would steal supplies and prepare for the evacuation. They had 6 hours before the mercenaries' scanners completed their sweep. 6 hours to do the impossible. Daniel found Wraith in the abandoned plant curled in a corner with his damaged wings wrapped around himself. The fever had spiked again and his scales had lost their luster. He looked worse than he had in the tunnel and Daniel's chest tightened at the sight. We have a plan, he said, crouching beside the Draken. It is dangerous and probably stupid, but it might work. Wraith's eyes focused with effort. Tell me, Daniel explained. The pulse, the evacuation, the stolen ship. With each word, Wraith's expression grew more distressed. When Daniel finished, the Draken shook his head. No, I will not let you do this. You will die. Not if the shielding works. And if it does not? If the radiation kills whoever triggers the pulse? You are asking someone to sacrifice themselves for me. Wraith tried to stand, but his legs would not support his weight. I am not worth this. I am not worth anyone's life. That is not your decision to make, Daniel said quietly. We already decided, all of us. We are doing this because it is right, not because of what you are worth. I am the one they want. Let me trigger the pulse. Let me end this. You are too weak. You would never make it to the reservoir. Daniel pulled out the straws Beth had prepared earlier. We are drawing lots. Fair and simple. Whoever gets the short straw goes. This is insane. Yes, but we are human. Insane is what we do best. The others gathered at the plant as the deadline approached. They stood in a circle, none of them speaking. Beth held out the straws, her hand steady despite the weight of what they meant. Daniel drew first. Long. Beth went next. Long. Rusty's hand trembled as he pulled. Long. Priya closed her eyes and selected. Long. Only one straw remained. Daniel reached for it, but Wraith's tail whipped out and knocked the straws from Beth's hand. They scattered across the floor, impossible to tell which was which. I will do it, Wraith said. His voice was stronger now, fueled by determination. I can fly. Not far, but far enough. I can reach the reservoir and trigger the pulse. You get to safety and take the ship. Live your lives. You will die, Daniel said. Wraith's eyes met his, and for the first time there was peace in them. I have been dead since my family was taken. You gave me something I thought I had lost. Hope. Let me give you something in return. Let me save the people who saved me. Outside, the mercenaries' scanners reached the plant's location. They had minutes, not hours. A decision had to be made, and there was no time left for arguments. Daniel refused to let Wraith go alone. They argued for 2 minutes they did not have before Beth physically shoved them both toward the reservoir. Stop being idiots. You both go. We rigged the shielding for 2. Now move before I shoot you myself. The radiation shielding was crude, built from mining equipment and prayer. Priya wrapped it around both of them while explaining it would maybe hold for 5 minutes. Maybe. The exotic particles glowed blue through the reservoir window. Beautiful and deadly, Wraith's wings could barely extend, but he managed a weak glide that carried them across the gap to the reservoir platform. Daniel held tight to the Draken's chest scales, feeling the fever heat through the damaged hide. When they landed, Wraith collapsed and Daniel caught him before he hit the metal grating. "I will do it," Daniel said. "You stay here." "Together," Wraith gasped. "We do it together." The control panel was old, designed for emergency venting of particle buildup. Daniel had studied the schematics during the planning. 3 switches in sequence, then a manual valve turn. Simple. Deadly. The panel's radiation warning flashed red, visible even through the shielding. "When this goes off, you have maybe 3 minutes to get to the surface," Daniel said. "Beth will have the transport ready. They will fly you out during the chaos. What about you? I will be right behind you." It was a lie. They both knew it. The radiation exposure would be massive. Even with the shielding, Daniel would be lucky to make it down the stairs. But Wraith needed to believe someone would survive this. Wraith's tail curled around Daniel's leg. "Not restraining, anchoring. Thank you. For everything. For seeing me as more than scales and profit. For being the human I thought could not exist. Your mother was wrong. We are not all monsters." Daniel's hand moved to the first switch. "Some of us just need a reason to be better." He threw the switch. The reservoir hummed. Exotic particles began to spiral faster and faster. The second switch released the magnetic containment. The third opened the mixing chamber. Now only the valve remained. The door below exploded inward. Mercenaries poured through, weapons raised. Hendrix stood among them, her gray suit immaculate even in the industrial grime. "Stop, both of you, now!" Daniel's hand hovered over the valve. "Let him go. Let all of them go. You can have me. I am the one who hit him. I have legal authority to seize all assets. That includes the Draken and everyone who helped him." Hendrix gestured and her team spread out. "You have 3 seconds to step away from that panel. If I turn this valve, the pulse will knock out everything in range. Your ship, your weapons, all of it. It will also kill you both. Is that really worth it?" Wraith pushed himself up using Daniel as support. His wings spread as far as the damaged membranes allowed. Not much, but enough to shield Daniel from the mercenaries' line of fire. He is worth it. They are all worth it. That is what humans do. They die for each other. They die for people they barely know. It is stupid and illogical, and it is the most beautiful thing in this ugly galaxy. Hendrix raised her weapon. Last chance, Daniel turned the valve. The reservoir screamed. Exotic particles met the catalyst in a reaction that turned the air white. The electromagnetic pulse exploded outward in a wave of invisible energy. Every light in the colony died. Every scanner. Every weapon. The mercenaries' orbital ship went dark and began its slow tumble toward the atmosphere. The shielding held for 4 seconds before it failed. Radiation slammed into them like a physical blow. Daniel felt his skin burn, his vision blur. Beside him, Wraith roared, a sound of pain and defiance that echoed through the dead colony. Then Beth was there with Rusty and Priya, dragging them both down the stairs. The shielding they wore protected them from the worst of it. They ran through corridors lit only by emergency glow strips, past mercenaries stumbling in the dark, past Hendrix screaming orders nobody could hear through their dead communicators. The transport waited at the emergency pad, engines already hot. They threw Wraith and Daniel inside. Beth climbed into the pilot seat while Rusty sealed the door. The transport lifted on manual controls. No computers to track them. No weapons to shoot them down. They flew low across the desert away from the colony, away from the crashed mercenary ship they could see burning on the horizon. Daniel faded in and out of consciousness, his body shutting down from the radiation. Beside him, Wraith breathed shallowly, his scales gone gray. "Stay awake," Beth ordered. "Both of you. We are not losing anyone today." They reached the emergency medical station at the secondary mining site after an hour. The doctors there took one look at the radiation readings and shook their heads. But they tried anyway. They pumped Daniel and Wraith full of anti-radiation medication. They put them in stasis pods to slow the cellular damage. They worked for 14 hours straight. Daniel woke 3 days later to white ceiling tiles and the sound of medical equipment. His body hurt everywhere, a deep ache that went to his bones. But he was alive. Somehow, impossibly, he was alive. Wraith lay in the pod next to him, still unconscious but stable. His scales had regained some of their color. The wings, carefully splinted and treated, showed signs of healing. It would be months before he could fly properly, but he would fly again. Beth sat between the pods, her face exhausted but smiling. "You are both idiots. You know that, right?" "Did it work?" Daniel's voice came out as a rasp. The pulse knocked out everything. "The mercenaries are stranded. The Galactic Council responded to our emergency beacon. They are sending investigators to shut down the whole operation." Beth laughed, a sound of pure relief. "Hendrix is going to prison. The colony workers are being relocated. And you two are heroes, though if you ever do something this stupid again, I will kill you myself." Daniel closed his eyes, letting the words wash over him. They had done it. Against all logic, against all odds, they had saved Wraith. They had saved each other. 3 months later, when Wraith could finally fly again, he chose not to leave. He stood with Daniel at the edge of the new settlement, watching the sun set over the desert. His wings, scarred but strong, caught the light like bronze metal. "I thought humans only hurt," Wraith said quietly. "But you reached for my broken wings and made them whole. You gave me back something I thought was lost forever." "What is that?" "Family," Daniel smiled. Around them, the colony bustled with activity. Humans and aliens working together, building something new, something better. In the tunnels below, they had turned the geothermal plant into a sanctuary for displaced Draken. Word had spread quickly. "The broken were welcome here. The hunted were safe. We are not perfect," Daniel said. "We will never be perfect. But maybe we can be good. Maybe that is enough." Wraith spread his wings and took flight, circling once before landing beside Daniel again. "It is more than enough. It is everything."